turning wires into the turning wires can't make it. He's out on the escape route, but swinging around and back up the horse, picking up speed.
Get your motor running because we're looking for adventures and race games. We'll be taking a look at PitchCar, the finger-flicking good race game, which hopefully we have a few helpful tips for. And then we'll roll into cars that run on power of dice, in the classic Formula D. And then we find out what's more fun than a barrel of monkeys. Apparently going ape in bumper cars is the answer. Finally, we'll look at games you can make from items around the house when you have no games. Race games are arguably the oldest form of board games. Senet is the predecessor of backgammon that was played by the ancient Egyptians over 2,500 years ago. Race games have changed quite a bit since then. Games like Robo Rally, where you program the movement of flag-chasing robots, avoiding lasers and obstacles. And then there's NASCAR racing, when you take on the role of professional race car drivers in the iconic race. And then you become cabbies in the city of London, racing about collecting fares. Or if you like a variety of race vehicles, Bridgetown Races has race vehicles of every possible kind, including your own 2 feet. But first, let's take a look at PitchCar. PitchCar is a game where you can customize the track, and it has several expansions to help you do just that. It's what you call a dexterity game, which requires hand-eye coordination to play it successfully. If you flick too soft, you might not make it up that ramp. But if you flick too hard, the car might just go off the ramp and crash into fiery boom. First, let's start with a couple quick tips on assembling your tracks. PitchCar uses red rails to keep your car from going off the road, but when assembling your track, consider placing your rails so it overlaps tracks. That will help it keep it together and level. And if you use the stunt car or speed and jump expansions, if your track's going to be there for a while, I might consider using painter's tape. This will help keep the ramps and the overpasses together. Finally, if you want a speedier game, consider sprinkling your tracks with carom powder. Carom is a much older flicking game, and carom powder is used on that game to help reduce friction. But what exactly is considered a flick? In the rules it says you use any of your fingers to flick, and in the sample picture shows the use of the thumb and the middle finger. We advise caution with this approach to avoid any unfortunate miscommunications. Based on the rules and images in the instructions, we would conclude to use any finger held back by another finger, and when one finger is removed, the second finger is propelled forward, striking the disc, sending it flying. There are 3 ways to play PitchCar. In the original standard rules, you first have a qualifying heat, as it's called. Players try to complete the course in as few flicks as possible to determine who goes first. To play, you just flick your car and try to stay on the road. If your car goes off the road or turns over, you go back to where you last pitched it, and then the next player goes. Also in the standard rules, if you knock another player's car off the road, both your car and their car go back to where they first were. Then it's the next racer's turn. The player that crosses the finish line first after 3 laps is the winner. If you're playing multiple races, players receive points based on how they placed. In first place they would have got 10 points, second place 8 points, third place 6 points, fourth place 5 points, and on down the line. The pursuit. This is either for 2 players or for teams. In the rules it says players must be separated by 8 tracks. So if you're playing the pursuit game, you probably want to avoid having the track over 16 pieces. What you do in the pursuit game is you're trying to catch up to the other player. And to win, you just pass the other player. If you're playing the team version, the team member that the car is passed is removed from the game. This continues until there's only 1 racer remaining. The trash variant is the preferred playstyle of the gamer's grind. It plays similarly to the standard rules as we previously mentioned, except that you can make the other racers go off the track. And if you do, their car goes back to where you last flicked. If your car overturns, it stays where it's at. But on your next turn, all you can do is flip your car back up, and it's the next player's turn. Now if that only came out with the combat car variant of this. Formula D is a race game that really captures the excitement and action of Formula 1 racing. And as with most race games, the objective is to cross the finish line first. There are 3 ways to play. There's the beginner rules, the advanced rules, and road racing. In both the beginner and the advanced game, each car has 6 gears represented by 6 different custom colored dice. In the first gear, you can move between 1 and 2 spaces. In the second gear, 2 to 4 spaces. The third gear, 4 to 8 spaces. In fourth, 7 to 12 spaces. Fifth, 11 to 20 spaces. And finally, sixth gear, 21 to 30 spaces. In the basic game, you have 18 wear points, but in the advanced play, it has more detailed wear points. It's the wear points that prevent you from going to 6th gear and just blow through all the turns without slowing down. To avoid your vehicle taking damage, you have to end your turn the amount of times is shown on the board. Basic game, the car takes as many wear points as the number of spaces it overshoots. But in the advanced game, it's your tires that takes the punishment. But either way, your car is destroyed if you overshoot a turn requiring you to make at least 2 stops, or only make 1 or no stops in a turn requiring you to make 3 stops. Sometimes you need to slow down to avoid overshooting or collide with another vehicle. To do that, of course, you have to apply the brakes. Braking is simply reducing the spaces you're moving. In the beginner game, if you brake, your car takes wear points for each space you slow down by. In the advanced game, you take up to 3 wear points on your brakes for each space you slow down on, but you also take additional damage on your tires. For 4 spaces, you take 1 point on your tires, 5 spaces 2 points, 6 spaces 3 points. For 7 spaces, your car spins out of control and goes boom. But what about the inevitable collisions race watchers secretly long for? If your car moves on a space next to or behind another car, you roll the black die. In the basic game, if you roll between 1 and 4, you lose and take 1 wear point of damage. In the advanced game, if you roll a 1, you lose 1 body wear point. Sometimes you find yourself going too fast and you just have to gear down. You skip up to 3 gears, but not without a cost. In the basic game, you take 1 wear point of damage for each gear skipped. In the advanced game, if you skip 1 gear, you take 1 wear point of damage on the gearbox. If you skip 2 gears, you take 1 wear point on the gearbox and 1 on the brakes. For 3 gears, you take 1 on the gearbox, the brakes, and the engine. If your car is taking too much damage, you may want to enter the pit stop for some much needed repair. You may recover all wear points and can start the next turn in the 4th gear. The rules for gearing down, collision, braking, and engine damage do not apply in the pit. A lot of decisions are about what gear you should be in. If you might risk a higher gear and risk overshooting the turn, or gear down for safety. But now let's leave the serious racing behind us and see what kind of spin Rio Grande putting on the genre in Spin Monkeys. You may already know that monkeys love having fun with their barrels, but they also love their carnival rides, especially bumper cars when the arena is filled with their favorite fruit. To set up their arena, you of course have to do what every bumper car operator has to do, and, well, scatter fruit. In the play area, you place apples on red, oranges on orange. Last and far from being the least, the all-important bananas go on yellow. The banana peels you'll set to the side. The player's starting points are on the blue circles, but it's best to start your players spread out as much as possible. Each player also gets a 2-sided turn token. It's red on one side and green on the other. And after each player has dealt 5 cards, it's time to get down to some monkey business. But first, the turn overview. Players choose and play a card face down and flip them up simultaneously. You rotate the bumper card clockwise as determined by the card you played. You move the bumper card by the amount of cards you previously played and collecting fruit along the way. You resolve events such as collisions, hitting the edges of the arena, or hitting slippery banana peels. And finally, when your turn's all done, you flip over your banana turn token. After everyone's placed their cards face down, they're all flipped up simultaneously. If there is any special text on the card that says to use when revealed, resolve those first. The cards you play change the direction your bumper car is facing. So if you flip up a 90-degree card, you turn your bumper car 90 degrees as shown on the car. Now you get to move your bumper car. The player with the most face-up cards in play goes first. Any ties are broken by the player with the highest degree of rotation, and along their way they collect fruit. And when your monkey gets a banana, they just can't help themselves. They peel it, eat it right away, and leave the banana peel behind. But if another car lands on the banana peel, it's just slippery enough they lose control, they draw a card to go in a new direction, and ignoring any special text that may be on the card. They discard that card and also the banana peel and continue moving along. But perhaps after they lose control, find themselves hitting a wall. To turn away from the wall, they have to discard 1 card in their play area for each 45 degrees they have to turn. But when they're clear, they can keep moving their remaining spaces. Now, it wouldn't be bumper cars if cars never bumped into each other. And just like in real bumper cars, your car will stop abruptly, pushing the car you hit away, and they get to move the remaining spaces you would have. The player that struck the second card loses his earliest previously played cards in play. Think of losing cards as your car losing momentum. But since you hit them, they lost control of their car, and they draw a random card to determine which direction they're moving. The game is over when only one type of fruit is left in the arena. Players count up their fruit to see who won. One optional rule if you only have a few players is have each player run 2 cars. Another consideration is to shrink the size of the board. The easiest way to do this is to place any unused fruit in the spaces on the outermost edges of the board. And if you feel that's not enough, you could try the outer 2 layers of the board. Spin Monkeys is listed for 2 to 8 players for ages 13 and up, but it should be accessible for younger players if they can grasp the concept of degrees on the card and on the bumper cars. And now that you're full on bananas, let's split and take a look at some games you can make from things around the house. Imagine you're stranded at Grandma and Grandpa's beach house, but to your dismay they had no games to pass the time. So after you're exhausted from kayaking all day, you convince someone to play a game with you, but to your dismay they had no games to pass the time. Or do they? Mancala is among the oldest games in the world, and it's a game you can make and play even on a desert isle. All you need to do is draw or dig 12 holes and gather 48 stones. But if it's raining outside, you can still play Mancala just by raiding the refrigerator. Unknown to some, whenever you buy a dozen eggs, you're also buying the perfect Mancala board. And if you don't have stones, dried beans are a perfect substitute. All you need to do is cut the lid off, cut the lid in half, trim off any problem areas, set up the board, and you're ready to go. If waging war is more your style, all you really need is a pencil and paper. There are probably many names for this game, but we'll just go with Space War. Kind of like PitchCar, this is also a sort of a flicking game. On a piece of paper you draw an even amount of ships for each side, preferably something simple because you're going to be redrawing them. And to make it more challenging, you may want to draw some obstacles, like meteors. And to move your ship, you place the pencil on the drawn ship and flick the pencil. And at the end of that pencil line, you redraw your ship and you scratch out or erase your starting point. If you hit one of the obstacles, you lost control of your ship and your ship's destroyed. But if you use that same flicking motion to attack a ship, a hit doesn't have to stop on that ship, it just has to go through it. You scratch out the destroyed ship and you move your ship to the end of your pencil line. You can set any goal you'd like in this game. The simplest, of course, is destroy your enemy fleet. Battleship is another easy one you play on paper. You don't necessarily need the plastic and the pegs. And finally, I made an impromptu game of my own, using a chessboard and a bunch of extra dice. We'll just call it deckers, or, well, maybe Chice? Each player gets 8 dice each. First is the setup phase. On their turn of the setup phase, they roll a die and they place it on the board where they like. The next player does the same, and you repeat till all the dice are on the board. Obviously it works best if each player has distinctive dice, so of course they can tell their pieces apart. And finally you place what we'll just call a king, or really just a target you're trying to get to. To move your dice, your pieces can either move one space, or as many spaces as shown on top of the die. But when they do move, you move them like they're rolling. So if it moves forward one space, the face of the die changes. If you land on a space your opponent's piece is on, the die of the higher number on top is the winner, and the other die is removed from the board. In the case of ties, both dice would be removed. But it's an example of when your options are limited, you can find or come up with a brand new game of your own. I haven't tested this game, so feel free to give it a try and let me know if you come up with any rules for it of your own. You've been watching the Gamers Grind Show. The Gamers Grind is located at 6326 Main Avenue in Orangevale, California. Be sure to like us on Facebook, visit our website, and of course come on down and play some games off the wall.